Once again, I thank you all. Today, we are expected to know something about the pyramid and the Temple of Solomon. Two profound and grand subjects. The first one is continuously in dispute. The various points of dispute are not yet settled till today. And the second one, the Solomon's Temple, is accepted as a symbol of universal wisdom, a part of which is taken from the descriptions of the Old Testament and part of which has been developed by the symbologists of the medieval and modern age. Now about the pyramid. There is a lot of literature about the nature of the pyramid. There are many groups of critics who have pointed out different views about the pyramid. Some have understood that it was constructed as a tomb. They concluded that the ancient Egyptian emperors had a habit of constructing the tomb in such a peculiar model. And to that effect, they made much research about the pyramid. Till now, they produced nothing except the statistics of the measurements. Still the question remains, why they should build such tombs? Why the tomb should involve so much of expenditure? What's the necessity of such a big tomb with vast dimensions? And unless there was something intentional, something more than the need of a tomb, why should there be some peculiarities in the construction? Why should the detail of the inner side of the tomb be in such a way? All these things remain unsolved till today. And those who assure that it is only a tomb, they have still find answers to these questions. And also common sense tells us that there is something more than a tomb in the construction itself. And if we go into the ancient records and the scriptures, there is some evidence about the construction of the pyramid. We will talk a little bit later. And there are the second group of people who assume that there is something more than a tomb. They understand that it was a temple of symbolism and that the ancients have formulated a peculiar formula where they could embed all their cosmological wisdom by way of transmitting the information to the next generations, handing down to posterity through ages. They chose to construct the pyramids with peculiar dimensions and shapes, which are highly symbolic of certain truths. This is one view. Some of them, they believe that it was the attempt of the wisdom of the Atlanteans. The ancient Atlantean race had attained such a high degree of perfection in knowledge and wisdom in many branches of wisdom. For example, astronomy, astrology, architecture, cosmology, and the theory of numbers, and they express their wisdom in terms of the branches of science. And it was but natural that made a grand attempt to formulate the whole wisdom into one grand formula. And the result was according to which the ancient Egyptians built the pyramid. This is the conviction of some who examined the nature of the pyramid. Now it stands as a confirmed belief that we can know something of the Atlanteans and their wisdom by studying the pyramids and trying to understand the intentions of the builders. The age of the pyramids was also discussed through centuries. First it was considered as about 2000 years before Christ, 2000. and then 3000 years, and then 4000 years. And the latest theory that exists is more than 10,000 years before that. So I think the next generations will receive a bigger number. Even for the present, it is a big number to the historians and archaeologists. But to the esoteric student who knows something of the ancient races and nations, it's not a surprise, because the age of the beginning of humanity on this earth is considered to be far, far earlier than the concept of the historian or the archaeologist. So, if in the present age the date of the pyramids is given as more than 10,000 BC, it's not a surprise to the esoteric student or the spiritual student. The latest is, it is considered as between 10,449 and 10,349 before Christ. It may be true, because great civilizations exist in that day, on that date, and before that date also. If you go to the earliest world records that are written in the ancient Indian scriptures, you will find that the present Kali Yuga has started 5,000 years ago, and twice the magnitude of the years of Kali Yuga. There was the previous age which had highly civilized mankind on earth. It was called the Dwapara age. Before that, there was what is called the Treta age, which is 3 times the magnitude of the Kali age. And before that, there was what is called Krita age, 4 times in magnitude to the Kali age. And during these 3.5 ages, humanity existed on all parts of the globe, and there were great civilizations on both sides of the globe, that is the American hemisphere and our hemisphere. And these kingdoms were described in those records. And we have no surprise to accept the date, the latest date given to the pyramids. The area of the pyramids exists about 30th degree latitude towards the north, and the measurements taken about the pyramids, they reveal certain facts to our mind, that the builders were great mathematicians who applied their knowledge of numbers and geometry in a highly advanced method, and that also they knew advanced astronomy, because the demarcations and the divisions they have done, they indicate the planetary orbits and the speeds of various planets, and also the Earth's rotation around the Sun, the number of days in the solar year, and the number of days for each revolution of the planet on a geocentric scale. All these things are symbolically marked on the pyramid, and it is proved by some critics that the builders knew the law of gravitation, and above all things, they knew the grand index that decides centuries and ages, which we call the precession of the equinox. It is also proved that they knew what we call the great year, that is the equinoctial year. And there are evidences to show that there are the symbols of the 4 ages divided. For example, the golden age, the silver age, the copper age and the iron age, which are described as the 4 ages by different names in Indian scriptures also. So, easily take it as a symbolic temple of the wisdom of the ancient humanity. The sides of each pyramid are all equilateral triangles, and the base is a perfect square, and the the model of the pyramid coming to the human mind itself is something mysterious. And if we meditate upon that fact, how the archetypes of creation came to the human mind as crystals. For example, the earliest temples of the earliest nations and races, they have the concept of the perfect globe, the circle, the perfect cube, and the pyramid. These are the archetypes of creation, because it is proved by great seers like Pythagoras that it is through these forms that the universe comes into existence. If we go through the works of Plato about the construction of the universe, these are the few figures which are called the molds of the creation. And a scientific subject like the science of the platonic solids, which was presented to the human mind for the first time by Plato, has not yet made its appearance to the modern mind again. All these facts prove that there is a formula that was revealed to the early humanity, according to which he could understand the dimensions of the universe and the process of the creation of the universe, the time keys and the space keys of each solar system being revealed. And there is ample proof to say that the whole universe was understood as a crystal that has crystallized from space, and whenever the creation came out, it revealed itself as the same type of crystal again and again. So this was the concept of the ancients, it seems. And all of them, they tried to have a revealed concept of the whole crystal of the universe. We have to congratulate them for the synthetic view of all sciences, which is not possible for an analytical mind to conceive. When we begin to imagine these figures together in a particular succession, then we will find that the archetype of the universe reveals itself to our mind also. The process of teaching such a science was there in vogue, and there were the masters who understood this grand crystal of the universe, and they had a method to successfully impart the structure of the crystal to their disciples, and that the attempt to transmit their knowledge to others resulted in the construction of the grand temples of the various places. And the pyramid was one such grand attempt. We can have this as our estimate about the pyramid. Now we have a rough idea of the structures of the pyramid, and our brother Paul will project the 2 or 3 sections of the pyramids before we go into the symbolic aspect of the pyramid. Here is a picture of the various pyramids that are existing. The pathways that lead us into and out of the pyramid, and the various compartments of each pyramid. Here is an enlarged version which shows us the path that leads into the pyramid, especially the biggest of the pyramids. There is the pathway which leads to the Queen's chamber, and the gallery, and the pathway that leads to the King's chamber, and the various divisions with their labeling will be seen in the next picture. Number 1 is the entrance into the pyramid, and from there one can visit all the parts of the pyramid. It was a fact that the tombs were constructed, the pyramids were constructed as the tombs of the emperors, but that does not mean that they are only tombs. There was a ritual in the ancient Egypt which was in the imitation of the construction of the great ear. That is, people used to walk round and round, and they made rituals about the planetary movements around the sun, and the death and the rebirth of an individual are considered to be cyclic, and the return of the same soul again to the earth is enacted as a drama, and a part of the drama was there conducted during the funeral function, because death was understood as a passage from the body which necessarily was followed by another entrance into another body. So this exit from the body and entrance into another body was conducted in the form of many rituals, and the passage into the pyramid must be symbolic of one such passages. This is the idea of some esoteric critics, and the mummification of the bodies of the emperors and preservation of the bodies was also a part of the symbolic ritual to show that a person who left the body comes down again to the body. Until we can understand the detail of the rituals, and until we can get a real key to the ancient Egyptian language, we cannot much understand about the symbolic significance of these rituals. But if we take into our study the various rituals of the ritualistic schools, we find one thing in common, that is the phenomenon of death and the human being crossing death. These two things are the common content of all the rituals of the various ritualistic schools, and the basis seems to be the pyramid. So the king's chamber and the queen's chamber also appear to be symbolic in their nature, for which reason they buried the bodies of the kings and queens there. For example, one esoterist describes that the king's temple is the center of a solar system, king's chamber, and the queen's chamber is symbolic of the moon's rotation around the earth. And the two are symbolic of the solar and the lunar activities of our earth. And they also represent the solar and lunar centers in the human body. Whether we know these things definitely or not, whether we understand the type of rituals that were conducted by the Egyptians or not, one thing is verifiable. The very shape of the pyramid is a symbol of the synthetic power of the human mind, and the very meditation of the shape of the symbol, when done systematically, leads to a unification of one's own capabilities, and it leads the mind from negativism to positive activity. And if we construct any building in the shape of a pyramid, and when we stand in the geometrical center of a pyramid and daily make a meditation or prayer from that center, we will find that great changes begin to occur in our constitution, and the mind begins to get integrated. To this effect, we have the process of conducting this ritual since many thousand years in many countries. A continuous tradition, unbroken, is there in India till now about a process called constructing the pyramid in the mind. We, the traditional families in India, we conduct this ritual often. And there are people who conduct this ritual morning and evening, that is at the time of sunrise and sunset in India. I think a proper study of this ritual will throw a better light upon the pyramids of Egypt. I will now give you an idea how the ritual is conducted. Before sunrise, a member of a traditional family in India, he finishes his bath and stands facing the east, then closes his eyes and imagines a milk-white line projecting from his brow center to the place of sunrise. And then he imagines the same line projecting into his back, through his head, straight back into the point where the sun sets. So, from east to west, he imagines one line passing through himself. Then, from south to north, he imagines another such line that is passing through himself. These two lines cross each other in the head of the person who is conducting the prayer at right angles to, that is perpendicular to each other. And then he imagines the dome of space as a big temple with the ring of the horizon touching these four cardinal points, that is east, west and north, south. Then he joins the 4 points to form a square. Now he has the figure of a cross and a square within a circle, at the center of which he is standing. And now he makes a 3-dimensional cross, that is a 6-armed cross. That is 1 to the east, 1 to the west, 1 to the south, 1 to the north, 1 to above, 1 to below. So he makes a 6-armed cross. And then he imagines the whole figure in a total dome or globe of space. So he constructs what is called a double pyramid. From the 4 corners of the square, he joins the edges right on his head when he has the pyramid. And then he joins the 4 corners again under his feet when he has a second pyramid. That is, one pyramid